It's that magical time of year again, where we wish goodwill towards men and partake in boundless materialism. We make resolutions because the effects of alcohol intake expunges short-term memory, and we give to others only to see what we get out of it. Just the way Jesus would have wanted, who was born on Halloween. Interestingly, I read an article, of all places on bloodydisgusting.com, titled, "Is Christmas actually the best holiday for horror movies?" While I wouldn't necessarily agree with that suggestion outright, with the October holiday, what you see is what you get. Any film celebrating Samhain, you'd already expect going in to be scary. With a Christmas horror story, it would not only be more of a wait-and-see anticipation, but considering the 12th month of the year is more affiliated with joyful celebration, it's an added incentive to see how someone would distort the Santa season to horror standards. Once you begin your trek down the rabbit hole of transforming merriment to misery, cheerfulness to chilling fear, nice to naughty, you begin connecting the dots of the horror influence that Halloween can have on Christmas. From a historic perspective, there is an overlooked precedent for a darker side of December. You have literary influences, folklore, mythology, and opportunities to corrupt classic fantasies into twisted fairy tales. On the subject of Halloween, it was John Carpenter's landmark film and subsequent ripoff Friday the 13th that split the slasher template into the Blood Calendar and Campground Carnage, respectively. Similarly, Yuletide Fear is comprised of Christmas terror specifically and winter horror in general. How good of our favorite film class, too, have provided a Christmas feast worth of morsels for us to sample as we celebrate the dead of winter. Before we bury our faces in the banquet and drown our sorrows in eggnog, a few ground rules. Firstly, I tend to consider the films in this genre to predominantly center on the wintry or holiday theme. Therefore, no Shining, The Thing, The Invisible Man, Edward Scissorhands, or The Dead Zone. I'm not saying Yuletide Fear should rely solely on gimmick alone, or there can't be a more artistic expression to them, but the aforementioned films should be held to a different and frankly higher standard. Plus, the seasonal theme is part of the fun. Speaking of standards, as a measure of quality control, number 2, you're not gonna get any mention of 30 Days of Night, Ravenous, or Dead Snow. Those are movies that happen to be winter horror movies. It doesn't mean they're any good. Being that this is a pseudo best of list, mundane offerings that happen to fit a theme don't have any business being featured as recommendations. The Mind's Eye has prepared a 5-course meal, but before we dig in, a word from our sponsors. If you're a frequent customer of Samsung the way that I am, you purchase everything from your TV and 4K players, from tablets and cell phones from the trusted brand. If you're already using Jabra headsets as your preferred audio tech provider, like I plan to very soon, then you know they provide a whole host of listening electronics ranging from workout earbuds, Bluetooth music headsets, and office hearing devices. If you use the link in the description for either Samsung or Jabra purchases, it'll help the channel out tremendously. With the promotional considerations accounted for, it's on with the show. Les Miserables, as the French call it.
They named it San Diego, which of course in German means a whale's vagina.
Based on Stephen King's 21st novel, instead of shifting gears down the right career path, our heroes should have shifted the right gear down an icy road. Author Paul Sheldon awakens from his car accident during a blizzard to find himself in the care of nurse Annie Wilkes. She'll be his caregiver and kidnapper for the film. With injuries to both legs that would make even Vince McMahon wince, Paul gifts his #1 fan his new manuscript as gratitude for her hospitality. Her gentle demeanor flips faster than your average AEW spot monkey over the composition. If you think that's bad, she flips out worse than an AEW fanboy facing criticism when she reads the finalized novel. When she insists he write a new novel to undo the changes she disapproved of, he hatches an intricate plot to do exactly what the hell she says under fear of manslaughter. What else can he do considering she's got his chestnuts roasting on an open fire? Maybe not the healthiest inspiration for the writer under duress. I mean, cutting an author's legs out from underneath might have the adverse effect of stifling his creativity. And you thought modern day cancel culture was bad when the mob mentality demands catering to their every whim? Imagine being face to face with an unhinged Karen of this magnitude with your livelihood and life in their hands. Apparently, he's not the only public figure in the house, as he manages to stumble across stories of hers. Inked in Blood, where she's playing the lead. Suspect in a court trial. Discovering that Paulie Boy's sneaking around means he won't be hitting his deadline, she figures if his fingers aren't typing, she'll relieve him of his ankles by hitting them with a sledgehammer.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Boy, she sure flipped his script. I guess when I mentioned cutting him off at the knees, I was aiming too high. I've heard that alcohol can motivate writers to do their best work, but I don't think that this was the type of hammered he was aiming for. Her aim, though, was dead on.
When in Rome.
So, after re-paralyzing this man in Mafia enforcer fashion, Paulie Boy convinces the batty bitch to spare his life until he can finish the novel. They say the best writers leave their audience wanting more, so I'll leave it to you to find out who gets the last word and who makes the final cut. This is such a great handling of that overlooked trope of obsession with a victim who is as isolated in location by a blizzard as he is confined in movement by his ravaged body. I find it thought-provoking that, despite her fixation on the celebrity author, this is a reverse harassment film because it isn't her pursuing him to his residence, but rather the author who finds himself trapped in the home of someone with a stalker's mentality. From my personal experience, much like The Shining, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Halloween, this is one of those movies that you hear about your whole life, watch with cautious optimism, concerned whether it'll measure up to the hype, and absolutely lives up to its reputation. It makes something of an interesting 90s trilogy of thrillers, including Don't Talk to Strangers and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. How's about an anthology? We head up to the Great White North for this collection of 4 interwoven stories. Instead of nourishing you, one narrative serving after another, this film switches up the storytelling formula by feeding you each plot point piecemeal. This shake-up in pacing is very much appreciated and serves to differentiate it, not only from other fear films, but other anthologies as well. We have on this film's menu a twisted spin on the nativity scene, an attempt at family bonding to chop down a tree of their own, resulting in a case of mistaken identity. An unwanted visit with relatives results in a game of cat and mouse with a monster that the victims unwittingly unleashed. Finally, helping himself to a plate of cookies, Santa discovers what's eating his elves, apparently themselves. While I would have favored all the stories remaining tonally consistent with the oddball humor of the Santa story, there is something to be said when you're given a variety pack of Christmas tales. On the subject of preferences, while I would have appreciated something more imaginative than a zombie apocalypse as the main threat, there is something kind of appealing about an outbreak in the North Pole. A premise like that could be its own movie when you ask, What happens when the guy that runs the Arctic toy factory can't even escape this isolated desert? Watching this movie made me wish we got more movies like it, capitalizing on the holiday to treat each story like a present to be unwrapped. I won't spoil anything, but the fact that this movie goes there with the story of the virgin birth is pretty ballsy. I have to say that the movie does run the gamut of monsters for this anthology, as each episode of the movie has its own creature featured. The family excursion to bring home a tree of their own definitely wins for creepiest tale, as they get more than they bargained for. It's no spoiler that we don't just get a cameo from Krampus, but a face-off between Kris Kringle and the Anti-Claus. Considering that main monster here is looking decisively brolic, and we had a wrestler play a killer Saint Nick, I for one demand that Goldberg reprise his role as Santa to face Krampus starring Brock Lesnar in a barbed wire tinsel match. Give this one a watch if for no other reason than this is the closest that Christmas has come to earning a trick-or-treat film of its own. You won't hear the unbridled and unqualified praise for slasher films from this channel as you do many a professional suck-up, but folks, this isn't just an underrated masked maniac movie, but as a premiere Yuletide fear film, this flick doubles as my absolute favorite trashy movie. Taking place at a college dorm, the film takes a fresh take on the sorority stalker formula as well as familiar Christmas killer tropes. While it introduces its cast of dorm sisters, the plot vacillates between past and present, revealing the villain's origins in amusing fashion. From one of the girls babysitting her drunken roommate, the protective house mother keeping a watchful eye out for her girls, the elder sister hoping to reunite with her estranged younger sibling, to the way that the ladies band together once they suspect that trouble is afoot, I don't know. I see the same female empowerment and characterization that people pretend to care about nowadays present in this 15-year-old film that those same posers didn't give a chance to a decade and a half ago. The aesthetic from the lighting is a real standout without being intrusive. The white trashiness of the killer's backstories is unapologetic in its depravity and is worthy of a chef smooch.
Chef Smooch, Arby's.
C'est magnifique! The cast play their roles well as play off each other convincingly. I have such low expectations for slasher movies that when I'm treated to characters that I actually care about and don't want to see get axed, it's a genuine standout for me. The cast was impressive for gathering multiple teen starlets under one movie and making it work. Katie Cassidy of Arrow fame, Michelle Trachtenberg from the show Buffy, playing a non-annoying character for a change. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is admittedly criminally underutilized, and everyone's favorite Muppet, Lacey Chabert from Mean Girls. There are so many 2000s era actresses here, I wonder why Danielle Harris wasn't in this. Was Danielle Harris in this? She wasn't. Why not? I'ma shoot straight. I really don't care who has a problem with this remake because they hold the original in such high regards, which frankly bored the hell out of me upon watching. This movie does its best to be its own animal and doesn't step on the toes of your beloved slasher forefather. It's got memorable kills and characters I'm rooting for, and that's all I can ask. Skip that glorified Me Too propaganda that Blumhouse thought they could get away with in 2019 just because their shoddy Halloween remake made money, and instead give this black sheep a second chance. And now we come to our second lovably tacky slasher film. Having debuted 22 years before our previous entry, this was the movie so controversial its mere poster gave box wine activists of the 80s a lightning rod to galvanize against mass maniac films, and the greater horror genre.
Unfortunately for the genre, critics gained a major ally.
Our kids are all learning to trust Santa Claus. They don't have any fairy tales left.
Stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there.
And they say on the commercial that it only looks like Santa Claus, but to a child, there is only one Santa Claus.
You've made it through Halloween. Now try and survive Christmas. Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Silent Night, Deadly Night became the flashpoint, igniting protests across the nation.
We always want to put the responsibility on somebody else, don't we? We're ready to say, I didn't do that, it was their kid, or it was that mother. Take the responsibility. You're watching television. I have a lot to say about people who let their kids watch TV.
Somebody got carried away with an idea. Wouldn't it be sensational to have a picture and advertise with Santa Claus? Sure, the public has a right to have an opinion. I don't think you have the right to impose your opinion on somebody else.
If I was watching television with my daughter and I saw a commercial with a killer Santa Claus or a killer Easter Bunny, I would feel that it was my job as the parent to sit down with my daughter or my son and talk about it. And then I would talk, elaborate about how this is fiction and explain, what kind of entertainment we're watching when we turn the television on. It's responsibility, and it starts in the home. Rather than call the president of TriStar and complain.
We're not out to do this to be famous or anything. We're out to get the movie taken out of the theater.
I think that's absolutely ridiculous.
As much as I adore this movie for its repugnant tone that it so brazenly displays to the point of social defiance, there are undeniable flashes of brilliance that afford it a level of distinction amongst fellow slasher and Christmas horror films. For instance, that opening scene.
Mom! What you want her for? She can't help you. Nobody can. You scared, ain't you? You should be. Christmas Eve is the scariest damn night of the year. I'd be scared too if I was you. Santa Claus only brings presents to them that's been good all year. To the ones that ain't done nothing naughty. All the other ones. All the naughty ones. He punishes. What about you, boy? You been good all year? You see Santa Claus tonight? You better run, boy. You better run for your life.
Need I say more? The sad part is that that's not even the worst of the trauma that this kid endures in this movie. When he's not witnessing haunting imagery of assault as a helpless bystander, he has to endure excessive discipline by those that should be merciful, which brings me to my next bright spot for this movie. Because his upbringing was so thoroughly warped, this impressionable child, now a grown man, can only see things in black and white, pure evil or all good, naughty or nice. He isn't strictly a killer Santa and actually rewards those he deems virtuous. That's what makes it distinct from others, even if that's a minor disparity. As for those judged wicked, in rolls the trademark killer Kringle, verdict is rendered, and sentenced to be carried out with gruesome immediacy. While it is no doubt exploitative, it does make the attempt to tell a story for its film, a backstory for its villain, and a tragic origin at that. It's in a class of trash all its own, and I invite you to pick this one up.
Garbage Day! Huh? No!
this final entry certainly fits into more the thriller category than horror. Nonetheless, a worthy candidate considering its survival components, both against the elements and the savagery of nature. This 2010 independent film sees 3 friends marooned high in the air on a chairlift of a ski resort. A simple premise, no doubt, whose beauty places all the emphasis on character interaction. This setup puts the challenge on the writers to think up creative scenarios and life or death choices to get the most of the one location this film takes place in, and I'm happy to say they rise to the occasion, no pun intended. I have a great deal of respect for filmmakers that can pull off single setting stories. Think the captivating 12 Angry Men, or that movie The Cell, or say that Misery flick is one to watch out for. You know, I had to sneak that scene in somewhere. Dear Lord, do these kids get put through the ringer? As if being stranded in the air in a skylift isn't bad enough, they've got a blizzard inbound and a pack of wolves circling their position. What could these teenagers have done to have enraged Mother Nature enough to put out a hit on them? You've got ground forces closing in on their location and air support in the form of a snowstorm? Talk about overkill. I haven't seen that level of overreaction since the fan backlash to that crappy Wheel of Time show on Prime. The way that the friends band together, keep faith alive, comfort one another to distract from their dire predicament, and literally weather this storm genuinely endears you to these characters and their struggle. How they try to keep their spirits up, braving death-defying attempts at escape in a desperate bid for survival, leaves you clinging to hope until the last possible second that they'll pull through, but you'll have to watch for yourself to see if they do. Well folks, there's my list. Call it a blessing in disguise that, no matter the season, there's always a reason to watch horror movies. It really does speak to the splendor of the genre that we can get quality scares from something like a mere changing of the calendar and the wide variety of monsters and murder that the winter months bring. With every creature featured, or fatality around every corner, it's like a new gift to unwrap. I've been Santa Inkarnate doing what he can to spread some Yuletide fear in order to keep the present tense. I'm not just a big deal, I'm the real deal.
Warn your friends. Warn everyone.